Have you ever noticed how the more independent you become, the more resistance you seem to attract? The more you think for yourself, set boundaries, and stop saying yes just to keep the peace, the more certain people begin to shift. But they don't always walk away. That would be too simple. Instead, they change tactics. They don't try to control you openly anymore. They start playing quiet games, making you feel guilty, isolating you, questioning your worth, or twisting your words just enough to make you doubt yourself. You see, the truth is this: the moment you stop being easy to manage, you become uncomfortable to those who relied on your compliance. Stoic philosophy has a word for this kind of awakening. It reminds us you cannot control other people, but you can refuse to be controlled. And that refusal is where your real strength begins. Let me tell you a story. There was a man named Adam. He wasn't loud, he wasn't aggressive, but he was firm. He lived according to his principles. At work, he didn't play office politics. In friendships, he didn't bend to manipulation. And in family, he set boundaries that others found inconvenient. At first, he thought people would respect him more for it. But something strange happened instead. The boss who once praised his honesty began to see him as difficult. Friends who admired his strength started calling him selfish. Family members said he was cold for not doing what they expected. Confused and hurt, Adam went to visit his old mentor, a man named Carter, who had seen a lot of life. Carter listened quietly, then walked Adam out to his backyard. There, two horses stood. One was tied to a post, the other was roaming freely. Carter approached the tied horse. It didn't flinch. Then he stepped toward the free horse. It backed away, cautious and alert. "See that?" Carter said. "When people can tie you down, they feel safe, predictable. But when you're free, you become something they can't control, and that scares them." Adam nodded slowly. "So what do? "They don't try to understand you," Carter replied. "They try to break you. They'll call your independence arrogance, your boundaries coldness, not because you're wrong, but because your freedom reminds them of the chains they have accepted." That night, something shifted in Adam. He stopped explaining himself, stopped seeking approval, stopped trying to soften who he was to make others feel more comfortable. And in that silence, something powerful happened. The manipulators faded. The weak-minded walked away, and those who truly respected him, they stayed. Because real strength recognizes strength. So here's the question. Are you trying to be understood by people who only want to control you? Or are you ready to stand your ground quietly, clearly, and without apology? When you do, you'll find that the people who matter won't ask you to shrink. They'll meet you at your level or not at all. Have you ever made a decision that felt completely right, only to have someone raise an eyebrow and say, "Are you sure about that?" And suddenly, something inside you starts to hesitate. That's not a coincidence, that's a tactic. One of the most subtle yet effective ways people try to control you is by challenging your confidence, not with outright criticism, but with carefully planted doubts. They won't say, "You're wrong." They'll say, "I'm just concerned," or "I'm only trying to help." And before you know it, you're second-guessing yourself, not because your choice was weak, but because someone else made you feel that way. It often starts small. You decide to pursue a new career path. You feel excited, ready. Then someone close to you says, "That's risky. What if it doesn't work out?" Or you set a boundary in a relationship, and instead of support, you hear, "You've changed. You used to be more flexible." They might call it advice, you might call it feedback, but what it really does is make you pause. Not to reflect, no, that would be healthy, but to seek permission, to wonder if you're valid without their approval. And that is where the trap is. Because the more you look outward for validation, the easier it is for someone to step in and guide you, not with wisdom, but with control. The moment they sense your uncertainty, they position themselves as the voice of reason. But it's not about reason. It's about power, quiet power, the kind that doesn't demand obedience. It just makes you question yourself until you surrender it willingly. I remember someone in my life who constantly advised me. Every time I shared an idea, they'd tilt their head and say, interesting choice. Not hostile, just enough to make me wonder. At first, I justified it, told myself they were being thoughtful. But over time, I realized they never actually supported anything that made me more independent. What they wanted wasn't my success, it was my doubt. Because as long as I kept circling back to ask, "What do you think?" they stayed in control. That's when I stopped explaining, not out of arrogance, out of clarity. You see, Stoic philosophy reminds us your value isn't determined by agreement. It's built from within. Epictetus once said, "A man's worth is not measured by the opinion of others, but by the integrity of his own convictions." And that's the line we have to hold. Because when your confidence depends on external approval, it becomes currency, and whoever controls it controls you. So how do you respond to those who question your certainty? First, recognize the tactic. Not all advice is neutral. Ask yourself, is this coming from love or from a need to influence? Second, trust your own reasoning. If your decision is grounded in thought, not impulse, don't let passive doubt unravel it. And finally, stop over-explaining. You don't need to defend your path to someone who never intended to walk it with you. Your confidence is your compass. Guard it, feed it, and most importantly, own it. Because once you stop asking for permission to be yourself, you'll realize just how much of your power was never really lost. It was just waiting for you to claim it. Have you ever stood up for yourself, set a boundary, spoke your truth, and somehow ended up being painted as the villain? It's one of the most frustrating dynamics we face in human relationships. You try to address an issue respectfully, but instead of taking responsibility, the other person flips the script. Suddenly, they're the one who's hurt. They're the victim. And you're left wondering, how did I become the bad guy? This isn't just miscommunication. It's a tactic. When someone loses the ability to control you, especially emotionally, the next move is often to control the narrative. They play the victim not because they're truly hurt, but because victimhood is a powerful mask. It makes them look innocent. It buys them sympathy. And more importantly, it paints you as cruel, cold, or heartless for simply asserting yourself. And here's the kicker. The more you try to defend yourself, the deeper you sink into their frame. The more you explain, the more you look like you're overreacting. The more you try to prove your intentions, the more they appear calm and reasonable by comparison. It's a performance, and you become part of it the moment you take the bait. I remember a time when someone I cared about repeatedly crossed the same line I had gently asked them not to. After months of being patient, I finally called it out. I wasn't rude. I wasn't dramatic. I was direct. But instead of owning up to anything, they gasped and said, "Wow, I can't believe you'd speak to me like that. I thought you were better than this." And just like that, the focus shifted, not to the boundary that had been crossed, but to their pain, their shock, their tears. It was a masterclass in emotional redirection. And it almost worked. until I remembered something that Stoic philosophy teaches us. You don't have to chase every feeling that's thrown at you. Epictetus said, "A wise man does not allow others to dictate his emotions." That principle saved me. I didn't argue, I didn't explain, I didn't apologize for a boundary I had every right to set. I simply said, "I understand how you feel," and walked away. You see, silence in the face of manipulation is not weakness, it's power. When someone is pretending to be the victim to avoid accountability, what they fear most is not your anger, it's your composure. They want a scene, they want drama, because in chaos, the truth gets blurry, but in calmness, everything becomes crystal clear. So what can you do? First, recognize the pattern. If someone always ends up the victim, no matter what they've done, that's not an accident. That's a strategy. Second, hold your emotional ground. You're not cold for being clear. You're not cruel for choosing peace over pleasing. And third, let time reveal what words cannot. Because when someone plays the victim long enough, people start to notice the cracks in the story. In the end, your job is not to convince the world that you're good. It's to stay rooted in your truth, regardless of who tries to twist it. Because strength isn't about shouting louder than the noise. It's about knowing when to stay quiet and walk away. Have you ever noticed how some people suddenly shift when you start building stronger relationships? When you find your voice, surround yourself with those who truly see you, and stop depending on just one person for approval? They start acting differently. Not always openly, but quietly, subtly. That's because when someone can't control you directly, they often try something more strategic. They work to isolate you, not by confronting you, but by quietly turning others against you. It is one of the oldest forms of manipulation. They don't try to change you, they try to change how others see you. They whisper doubts into the ears of your friends, plant little seeds like, "I don't know if you can really trust them," or "Lately they've been acting strange, haven't they?" The comments seem harmless at first, but over time those seeds grow into distance, silence, and suspicion. And then one day you look around and realize, the people who once stood beside you now stand just far enough away to make you question your worth. Why do they do this? Simple. When you're surrounded by truth, encouragement, and healthy support, you become harder to control. But when you're alone, when you start to doubt who's on your side, manipulation becomes much easier. You're more vulnerable, more likely to second-guess yourself, more willing to compromise just to feel connected again. Think of it like a wolf hunting its prey. A predator never attacks the strongest in the pack. It waits until one is separated, alone, unsure, disconnected. That's when it strikes. The same thing happens in toxic dynamics. I've seen it firsthand. Years ago, I had a friend I trusted deeply, but over time, they started pulling others aside, saying things about me that weren't true. I didn't realize it at first. I just noticed people withdrawing, conversations becoming shorter, the energy changing. It wasn't until someone finally told me, "Hey, I think you should know what's been said about you," that the pattern became clear. And for a while, I felt the urge to fight back, to explain myself to everyone, to win people over again. But then I stopped, because I remembered something the Stoics taught. Not everyone is meant to walk beside you, and that's okay. Seneca once said, "Associate only with those who make you better," and that became my compass. Instead of chasing those who had turned away, I focused on nurturing the connections that had stayed real. I stayed consistent in how I treated people. I let time reveal the truth. And you know what? The people who mattered came back. The rest, they were never truly there in the first place. So if you feel like someone is trying to isolate you, don't panic. Don't beg. Don't chase. Instead, reconnect with the people who truly know your heart. Spend your energy where it grows, not where it withers. Because in the end, you don't need everyone. You just need the right ones. And those people, the ones who see your worth without being told, won't be swayed by whispers in the dark. Have you ever made a decision that felt right, firm, honest, maybe even necessary, only to hear, after everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me? It hits hard, doesn't it? Suddenly, what was once a clear choice becomes clouded with guilt. You begin to question yourself. Did I go too far? Was I being selfish? That's not just a disagreement. That's emotional manipulation. Some people don't control you with rules or demands. They do it with feelings. Guilt, obligation, sympathy. They don't say, do what I want. They say, I need you. I trusted you. You're hurting me. And if you're someone with a kind heart, someone who values loyalty or compassion, it works. It makes you hesitate. It makes you bend, not because you change your mind, but because they changed how you feel about it. You see, manipulation often wears the mask of love or concern. It's not loud. It's subtle. It slips in when your guard is down, when you're tired or vulnerable. And the most dangerous part, it doesn't feel like control. It feels like connection, like obligation, like sacrifice. But deep down, it's not about your well-being. It's about their need to keep you within reach, obedient, uncertain, willing to doubt your own instincts if it keeps the peace. I've experienced this firsthand. There was someone in my life who always had a way of twisting the moment. If I said no, they made it personal. If I held a boundary, they turned into the victim. One day I made a decision that didn't align with what they wanted. It wasn't cruel, it wasn't careless. It was simply mine. But instead of respecting it, they said, I just can't believe you'd do this to me. After all I've done. And there it was, the guilt, the doubt, the urge to apologize for simply choosing what was right for me. But then I paused. I remembered what the Stoics taught. Real strength is not about controlling others. It's about controlling yourself. Lao Tzu said it best. He who controls others may be powerful, but he who has mastered himself is mightier still. That changed everything for me, because the moment I stopped reacting emotionally, the moment I didn't flinch, didn't defend, didn't explain, they lost the power to move me. I wasn't cold, I wasn't distant, I was calm, grounded, clear, and they didn't know what to do with that because their control depended on my reaction. So how do you handle someone who manipulates through emotion? First, recognize the pattern. If someone consistently makes you feel guilty, indebted, or pressured, stop and ask, is this love or is this leverage? Second, stay steady. Don't rush to defend yourself or explain every decision. The more emotionally neutral you are, the less power they have over you. And third, remember, you are allowed to make choices that protect your peace, even if others don't understand them. In the end, emotional manipulation only works when we hand over our feelings. But once we reclaim them, once we learn to respond with presence instead of guilt, we become something they can't bend anymore. Grounded, sovereign, and free. Have you ever noticed how some people know exactly what to say to get under your skin? They don't raise their voice. They don't even sound aggressive, but somehow their words cut deeper than they should. They bring up your past. They question your character. They twist your intentions. And before you realize it, you're no longer calm. You're defending yourself, raising your voice, maybe even saying something you didn't mean. And just like that, they win. This is one of the oldest manipulation tactics in the book, emotional provocation. When someone realizes they can't control you through guilt, obligation, or influence, they move to their last weapon, your anger. They poke at your insecurities. They challenge your boundaries. They say things not because they care, but because they want you to snap. And the moment you do, they get to step back and say, "See, I told you they were unreasonable." It's a setup, and sadly it works far too often. Because as human beings, we carry emotions. We carry scars. And when someone deliberately presses on a wound that hasn't fully healed, our natural instinct is to react. But Stoicism teaches something different. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike your enemy." In other words, when someone tries to pull you into chaos, the strongest response is to stay grounded. I'll never forget a conversation I had with someone who knew exactly how to trigger me. They brought up something deeply personal, something they knew had caused me pain. And they did it with a smirk, calm as ever in front of others. My heart pounded. My mind raced with comebacks. But then I paused. I took a breath, and instead of reacting, I simply said, "That's an interesting way to put it." I didn't defend. I didn't explain. I let the silence speak for itself. And you know what happened? They froze. Because they were prepared for a fight, but not for peace. You see, emotional control isn't about bottling things up or pretending you don't feel heard. It's about choosing how and when you respond. It's about not giving your power away to people who don't deserve it. Because the moment you let them dictate your emotional state, you hand them control over your actions, your words, your energy. So how do you deal with people who try to provoke you? First, recognize the pattern. If someone consistently says things that leave you angry, unsettled, or questioning yourself, it's not accidental, it's intentional. Second, stay calm. It sounds simple, but it's powerful. When you remain centered, their entire strategy falls apart. They have nothing to fight against. And finally, walk away from unnecessary battles. Not every insult deserves an answer. Not every attack deserves a counterattack. Some victories are won in silence. At the end of the day, your peace is too valuable to be thrown away over someone else's attempt to bait you into a reaction. Remember, the strongest person in the room isn't the loudest. It's the one who refuses to be controlled. Have you ever noticed someone suddenly start mimicking you? Not in a playful, flattering way, but in a way that feels calculated. You take a new direction in life, they follow. You express a unique idea, they reword it as their own. You shift your style, your routine, your focus, and like clockwork, they mirror it. At first, you might brush it off. Maybe it's just coincidence. Maybe they're inspired, but then it keeps happening again and again, and you realize they're not just watching you. They're trying to be you. And the question becomes, why? The answer is simple. Because they can't surpass you, they try to replicate you. Copying becomes their way of staying close to your light without having to ignite anything of their own. But here's what they don't understand, Danine. Imitation can never replace authenticity. A shadow may move when the sun does, but it can never shine. A copy may look similar, but it will always lack the spirit, the depth, the quiet strength of the original. I remember someone who did this to me. Every step I took, they followed. Every risk I took, they mirrored. And for a while, I felt strangely violated, not because they were stealing ideas, but because they were trying to claim an identity they hadn't earned. It felt like being watched in a room where you thought you were alone. But eventually, something shifted in me. Instead of feeling frustrated, I began to see it differently. I realized that copying isn't a sign of competition. It's a sign of insecurity. They're not trying to compete, they're trying to keep up. And that shift in perspective gave me peace. Because no matter how closely someone imitates your moves, they can never imitate your mind. Your lived experience, your insight, your evolution, all of that is yours and no one can take it, no matter how hard they try to recreate it. Stoic philosophy speaks directly to this. Seneca once said, "Character, not imitation, defines a person." That means true value lies not in what we appear to be, but in who we are when no one's watching. In our choices, our discipline, our depth of thought. So what do you do when someone keeps copying you? First, don't waste energy trying to stop them. The fact that they're copying means they're already behind. Second, keep evolving, keep growing, keep reinventing yourself in ways they'll never anticipate because they're too busy looking backwards. And third, remember that originality isn't loud. It's steady. It doesn't seek validation. It doesn't need to prove. It simply is. And that's what they'll never be able to match. In the end, let them copy your surface. You keep building your substance. Because while trends fade and masks fall, what's real always outlasts what's borrowed. You weren't meant to be followed. You were meant to lead, not by force, but by being exactly who you are. Have you ever experienced this? You're living your life, staying in your lane, not bothering anyone, and suddenly you hear a rumor. Something twisted, something false, something that doesn't even sound like you. And the worst part? It's spreading. You didn't say that. You didn't do that. But somehow someone wants others to believe you did. And now you're left in a position you never asked for, having to defend yourself against lies you never created. This isn't just gossip, it's a tactic. When someone can't control you directly, when you won't bend, submit, or play their game, they often shift to something darker. Reputation sabotage. They can't beat you head on, so they go behind your back. They twist your words, question your integrity, or invent just enough drama to make people uncomfortable around you. Not because you're wrong, but because you're unshakable. And that threatens them. The goal is simple: get you to react. They want you on edge, angry, distracted. They want to pull you off balance, make you chase down every whisper. Explain yourself to everyone, burn your energy proving your worth. But here's the truth: the more you chase the lie, the more attention you give it. And that's exactly what they want. I remember a time when this happened to me. A quiet distortion passed from one mouth to another until it became something entirely different. My first instinct was to confront it, clear the air, set the record straight. But then I paused. I asked myself, do I want to spend my energy fighting shadows, or do I want to keep showing up as who I really am? That's when I remembered something Marcus Aurelius once wrote. If you are unaffected by what is said, you have already won. Because in a world full of noise, silence is power. Stoic wisdom teaches us that truth doesn't need defending. It needs demonstrating. Let your actions speak. Let your consistency speak. Let your peace speak. Because while lies may run fast, they don't run far. And in time, people start to notice who's creating the noise and who's quietly living with integrity. So what can you do when people spread false narratives about you? First, don't react impulsively. Every reaction feeds the fire. Second, trust your character. If you know who you are, you don't need to convince anyone else. The people who truly know you won't be fooled, and the ones who are easily swayed, they were never in your corner to begin with. And third, let the truth do what the truth does best. Stand. Because while lies require constant maintenance, the truth just needs time. In the end, your reputation isn't defined by rumors. It's defined by how you carry yourself when they come. Stay calm, stay grounded, and remember, silence isn't weakness. It's discipline. It's choosing not to throw pearls before those who don't care to see their value. Let them talk. You keep building. Because eventually the noise fades. And what's left, quiet, steady, unshaken, is the truth. And you, have you ever shared a dream with someone and felt a strange pause in their response? They smile, they nod, they might even say, "I'm happy for you." But something in their tone doesn't match their words. It's not encouragement, it's evaluation. As if they're not cheering for your success. They're waiting for your failure. Not everyone who claps for you is on your side. Some are just watching, quietly, carefully, waiting for the moment you stumble so they can say, "I knew it." This tactic is subtle, but it's real. These people won't sabotage you directly. They won't stand in your way. Instead, they pretend to support you while secretly hoping things fall apart. Because your growth makes them uncomfortable. Your courage challenges their passivity, and your success threatens their excuses. So instead of rising with you, they wait behind you, arms folded, keeping score. I remember someone like this in my own life. Every time I shared a new project or a direction, they'd smile politely and say, I hope that works out for you." Not exactly discouragement, but not belief either. And every small setback I encountered, they'd be quick to remind me, "See, that's why I wasn't so sure." At first, I tried to prove them wrong. I pushed harder, worked longer, burned energy just to show them I could do it. But that was the trap, because once your motivation becomes proving something to someone else, you're no longer doing it for yourself. And that gives them power over your path. That's when I turned back to Stoic philosophy. Epictetus once said, "Do not waste energy on those who hope for your downfall. Your focus should be on your own growth." That wisdom hit me hard, because real strength isn't found in reaction. It's found in discipline, in staying focused on the mission even when no one believes in it but you. So what do you do when people silently root for your failure? First, recognize the signs. If someone only shows up when you fall, but disappears when you rise, that's not support. That's surveillance. Second, stop wasting energy trying to win them over. Your journey isn't a performance. You don't owe them proof. You owe yourself progress. And third, let your success be your silence. You don't have to announce your wins. You don't have to defend your setbacks. Just keep moving, keep learning, keep rising. Because nothing bothers a quiet skeptic more than watching you grow without needing their permission. They don't understand how you keep going. They don't understand how you stay centered. And that confusion, that quiet frustration, is your clarity. In the end, you're not here to impress those waiting for you to fail. You're here to evolve, to learn, to outgrow old versions of yourself, regardless of who's watching or hoping you won't make it. So let them wait. You've got better things to do. You work hard. You stay focused. You make progress, not overnight, but step by step. And one day something finally clicks. A breakthrough, a quiet success, a moment you feel proud of. You share it, not to boast, just to acknowledge the effort it took to get there. But instead of congratulations, you hear, "Yeah, but that's not a big deal. Lots of people are doing that." Or worse, "Must be nice, you're just lucky." It's subtle, but it stings. Not because you need applause, but because someone you thought would lift you up just tried to shrink what you built. This is one of the more insidious tactics people use when they can't ignore your growth. When they can't deny your progress, they'll try to downplay it, not by attacking it directly, but by making it feel ordinary, replaceable, undeserving. Why? Because your success threatens something in them. It disrupts their comfort. It reminds them of their own inaction. And instead of being inspired by your growth, they feel exposed by it. So they minimize it, hoping that if they make you feel small enough, you'll stop reaching higher. I've heard it myself. After launching a project I poured months of work into, someone close to me casually said, "I mean, sure, but that's kind of expected nowadays, right?" And just like that, the air shifted. Not because what I achieved wasn't real, but because someone was trying to shrink the room so I couldn't stand tall in it. That's when I turned to Stoic wisdom. Seneca once said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor." And I've learned this. People who try to reduce your success often feel starved for their own sense of worth. And if they can't rise with you, they'll try to pull you down emotionally so that you never rise again. So what do you do when someone tries to make your progress feel small? First, recognize what's happening. Not every critique is coming from clarity. Some are coming from comparison. And comparison is a poison that distorts everything. Second, protect your perspective. Your success doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't need to be praised. It just needs to be real to you. If it took courage, discipline, and effort, it's valid. Full stop. And finally, detach from the need to be validated by those who can't even validate themselves. Their opinion is not a mirror of your worth. It's a reflection of their own limits. Because here's the truth. Success isn't measured by how many people clap when you arrive. It's measured by how far you've come from where you started and whether you kept your integrity along the way. So the next time someone says, "Anyone could have done that," smile quietly. And remember, they didn't. You did. And that matters, whether they admit it or not. Not everyone who enters your life will try to understand you. Some will try to influence you. Others will try to shape you. And when they realize you can't be controlled, can't be guilted, cornered, or manipulated, they'll try something else. They'll make you question yourself. That's the real trick, isn't it? Not breaking you from the outside, but slowly convincing you to shrink from the inside. But here's the truth, and it's one worth coming back to again and again. You don't need to defend every decision, explain every boundary, or be understood by everyone to live in alignment with your values. You don't need the approval of people who never truly saw you in the first place. You just need clarity and the courage to stand in it. Stoic wisdom teaches us that real power isn't about controlling other people. It's about mastering your own response. When someone criticizes you unfairly, when they twist your words, when they try to manipulate you through emotion or guilt, The strongest thing you can do is not react the way they expect. Not out of bitterness, not out of pride, but out of peace, because once you stop needing to be agreed with, once you stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you, you take your power back. Quietly, steadily, completely. And yes, there will be moments when that clarity comes with disappointment, when people you once trusted reveal their true intentions, when support you thought was genuine turns out to be conditional. But that's not the end of your story. That's just a chapter closing. Because while some people may walk away when you stop being easy to manage, others will stay. Not because they agree with everything you say, but because they respect who you are when you stop compromising. And those are the people worth keeping. So don't let the ones who try to silence your voice convince you to quiet your soul. Don't let their discomfort dictate your boundaries. Don't let their insecurity shrink your vision. Be strong enough to stand alone when you need to, but be wise enough to stay open when someone real comes along. Because strength isn't the absence of connection, it's the ability to choose it intentionally, to trust with discernment, to love without losing yourself. That's what inner freedom looks like. That's what true power feels like. And if this message resonated with you, if something in it reminded you of your own strength, your own voice, or your own journey, don't forget to hit that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe for more insights just like this. We're building something here. A community rooted in clarity, presence, and emotional self-respect. Thank you for being part of it.